TSN Week. Zalibiu Mazu.
For more than 12 hours, there was a barrage of drone attacks. The Russians launched 643 aerial attack weapons at Ukraine last night. Kyiv region, Zaporizhzhia, Khmelnytsky region, Sumy region, Mykolaiv region, Chernihiv region, Odessa region. They struck residential buildings. A bakery and the Institute of Cardiology were also hit. Our air defense forces neutralized 611 aerial targets as reported, but there were still hits and debris falling in populated areas, resulting in the deaths of adults and children. We will still express our condolences to the families of the victims and share more about this, but the essence of these attacks is clear. At the close of the UN General Assembly week, Russia is demonstrating that they have no intention of ending the war, and this could very well be a response to Donald Trump, who made striking statements this same week. Russia is a paper tiger. Ukraine has a magnificent spirit and is only getting stronger and will be able to restore its country to its former state. He wrote this after meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. What exactly caused such a drastic change in the mood of the President of the United States, who until recently believed that Ukraine had no chance in the war against its larger and more powerful neighbor, is still being discussed by the press? What interests me most is how much we can trust the mood of this unpredictable American leader. Do these beautiful words actually mean a real increase in aid? We'll also talk about this as well as the work of the Ukrainian delegation at the anniversary session of the General Assembly, which brought together a lot of intrigue. And whether NATO will finally dare to shoot down unidentified drones that have been brazenly conducting reconnaissance over military bases and the alliance's largest airports all week. We'll be talking about this in the next hour. This is a tense week. The more you know, the better armed you are. Greetings to you, unbreakable Ukrainians. The United Nations final exam? What made Trump suddenly fall out of love with Putin and change his stance on Ukraine and NATO, even to the point of shooting down Russian planes?
He stayed just between us, right?
And the 80th UN General Assembly became the last anniversary of this largest organization on the planet. Extremely tough battles and Ukrainian heroes who changed Trump. Why did Pokrovsk, instead of being a trump card for the American president, become a pit for Putin's victory? Reports from secret positions where our defense is held by a rock. Seafood in the steppes of Ukraine.
Friends, we are at the first shrimp farm in Ukraine.
How the shrimp unexpectedly became a star of the Ukrainian agricultural market.
A completely new and exciting niche in the business world.
And how to build a profitable business right on your own dacha? A special report by TSN of the week. There have already been 42 surgeries on them in Zaporizhzhia after tonight's hellish night, among them 3 children. There were strikes in the middle of the cities of Bilatserkva and Fastiv. But the main target of Putin's massive combined missile and drone attack last night was the capital. Kyiv residents are bringing flowers and toys to the building where Russia killed a 12-year-old girl. In total, there are already 4 dead. It wasn't just civilian homes that came under drone and missile strikes. In the Kyiv region, an explosion tore apart an entire street. TSN correspondent Alina Lisova visited the sites of the attacks. You will see her report now. And our way to help stop these brutal attacks is to support Ukraine's defenders. In this broadcast, we want to support the 159th Mechanized Brigade. Its soldiers are currently deployed in 3 strategically important directions: Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, and Sumy. For effective operations, they need a bypass radar in Ukraine. And every 10, 20, or 100 hryvnias you donate using this QR code helps. It's another step toward a peaceful sky over Ukraine. Thank you.
A hole instead of a wall and charred walls. This is what a 5-story building in the Solomyansky district of the capital looks like after being hit by a Russian drone during another massive attack. The enemy strike hit the 3rd and 4th floors. Neither the facade nor the floors could withstand it, and in that very moment, the apartments were engulfed in intense flames.
It went in for the attack, and I fell to the floor. There was an explosion. People started shouting that the doors were blocked. I rushed to the children, unblocked my door, unblocked theirs. They ran out, and we all went downstairs.
I was deeply sleeping, and then the incredibly loud and sudden sound immediately made me jump up and run without hesitation. The neighbors started screaming desperately, "Save my child!" The enormous fire was very big, and they simply couldn't put it out right away, not immediately. Then people were being carried out from the balconies.
Ilona and her 85-year-old grandmother, who were sleeping in their apartment on the 3rd floor at the time of the strike, miraculously were not harmed. Both of them just got a fright while on the other side of the wall. Rescue workers from the state emergency service were pulling a 12-year-old girl out from under the rubble. A concrete slab had fallen on the child.
Yesterday I saw her with her father from the balcony. That girl, she would go out to the car with her father, she would go somewhere or drive somewhere. The girl was in the bedroom, which is where the strike hit.
Here in the first minute, the rescuers managed to save all 3 of them. So to remember exactly what happened under the rubble, we never really will.
And this is already another site of the attack on Kyiv, the Strajesko Institute of Cardiology. In the morning, debris from an enemy Shahed drone flew straight into the nurses' station on the 4th floor. At the moment of the strike, there was a nurse there who, even during the air raid alert, was doing her job and was killed. Nearby, in the adjacent ward, her patient was found with no signs of life. However, all the other 150 people in this building with heart conditions were also on the edge.
A severe psychological trauma was inflicted. For patients with cardiovascular diseases, this could lead to complications in their condition.
In total, as a result of the Russian combined attack in Kyiv, 4 deaths have been reported and there is destruction in 20 locations across the capital.
Complete ruins and devastation. This is what some areas of the capital look like now after the enemy attack. Here, people's homes have been destroyed and an entire street has essentially been wiped out.
Piles of bricks, rebar and cars burned to the ground. Scenes like after an apocalypse. This is what the residential complex in Petropavlivska-Borshchahivka looks like now. This location in the Kyiv region suffered perhaps the most.
We were soundly sleeping. The family stopped on the 6th floor. I suddenly fell from the window. It started banging loudly, and then there was this distinct whistling sound, much like a rocket flying through the air, and then a massive explosion.
I was in the hallway. I heard the distinct whistle of a rocket flying, and then I quickly closed the door and heard the loud explosion, and that was it. Everything went completely dark.
Mrs. Marina shows the shelter in her own home where she hid during the attack. The blast wave blew out the armored door here, and on the stairs you can see drops of her son's blood. When he heard the powerful explosion, he ran barefoot over the debris to the shelter. Only by some miracle did all the neighbors survive as well, even though all that was left of their house was a pile of construction debris.
Right behind this little wall, the children were sleeping, and the wall shook, but the child survived. You're all alive, and that's it. We're happy that we survived.
Alina Lisova, Mariana Bukan, Oleksiy Zelenko, Volodymyr Ostapenko, TSN, 1+1, Marathon United News.
Then he only understands force, and he proved it once again. No words, no diplomacy, without being backed by long-range missiles and air defense systems, will be able to accomplish the task of forcing Russia to peace. In Volodymyr Zelensky's opinion, Moscow deserves the world's harshest pressure. The president of Ukraine spoke about this at the UN General Assembly as well. But most of the attention there was focused on the meeting between Trump and Zelensky, and this meeting definitely exceeded all expectations. TSN's own correspondent, Olha Koshelenko, witnessed this very tense UN anniversary and saw some interesting details up close.
The United Nations is criticized for its helplessness and inability to fulfill its functions, and yet, every year, such a number of world politicians come to New York for the high-level General Assembly that you probably won't see anywhere else in the world. And it's not just a formality. In a limited amount of time, you can hold an extraordinary number of bilateral meetings here. It's the most expensive negotiation platform in the world, where the number of VIPs per square meter is off the charts, and top officials can once again blend in as ordinary passers-by in the crowd. Here is Turkish President Recep Erdogan surrounded by security guards. It's only about 20 meters to the Turkish delegation's office, but the road has been blocked for a delegation's motorcade. The leader is displeased and the security tries to force their way through the obstacle. But they are stopped by the New York police. French President Emmanuel Macron, finding himself in a similar situation, first tries to negotiate with the police officers.
I'm very, very sorry indeed, Mr. President Uko.
After failing, he calls his friend Donald directly.
Guess what happened? I'm stuck in the middle of the street because everything's been blocked off for you.
For making his guests wait, Donald Trump was avenged by the escalator at headquarters. As soon as the First Lady and the President stepped onto the escalator, it stopped. Later, the White House would demand an investigation and consider this almost an attempt on the lives of the top officials. Secretary Tuonu, during an internal investigation, found out that the person responsible for the incident was the personal operator of the American president. Here he is, running up the escalator the wrong way, and that's supposedly why the stop mechanism was triggered. So by the time Trump arrived at the assembly hall, he was already agitated, and then another twist. The teleprompter wasn't working. He had to read part of his speech from notes. I
don't care anymore who's operating that teleprompter, but they've got a big problem.
But what Trump will say from
the podium about his former, until recently, friend Vladimir was not improvisation, but a new official position, a presentation he had saved for this major international gathering.
Everyone thought that Russia would win this war in 3 days. But things didn't turn out as expected. It was supposed to be a quick clash, and this does not reflect well on Russia. It looks bad for them.
Later, at a meeting with the president of Ukraine, Trump will call Zelensky a brave man and say that he admires Ukraine's fight and will continue to criticize Russia. Most of all,
the main progress is that the Russian economy is in a terrible state. As you know, it is not collapsing, and frankly, Ukraine is doing very well and is holding back a very large army. That's extraordinary.
15 minutes after the meeting with Zelensky ended, a post appeared on Trump's Truth Social page, personally signed by him. Usually this means that the president himself wrote it, not members of his team. One might have thought that Trump's page had been hacked. The message says that Ukraine is capable of reclaiming all its territories and even going further.
When the residents of Moscow and all the big cities, towns and regions across Russia find out what is really happening with this war, they will hardly be able to refuel their cars because of the long lines, not to mention all the other things happening in their war economy, where most of the money is being spent on fighting Ukraine, which has great spirit and is only getting stronger. Ukraine will be able to restore its country to its original form. And who knows, maybe even go further.
When it comes to Donald Trump, such moods are common, like, you have no cards? Ukraine can reclaim all its territories and might even go further, moving forward without much hesitation. But if you manage to catch the right phase of the internal state of the President of the United States, you can actually achieve something. At the very least, world leaders are trying to do just that. So at the meeting, Zelensky carefully complained to Trump about his friend, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who, despite the United States' insistence on refusing Russian energy supplies, still wants to buy from Putin.
Mr. President, we support your idea. I want to talk about how to stop European countries from being able to buy Russian oil and gas. I had a conversation with the Prime Minister of Slovakia. It was a good conversation. I think they need alternative routes and they support this idea. I'm not sure the Hungarians are ready, but we'll think about it in the future.
This week, Trump had two opportunities to demonstrate in practice the art of making deals with countries that continue to buy Russian energy resources. After the UN General Assembly, Turkish President Erdogan came to the White House. He listened impassively to the host's remark that refusing to trade with Putin would be beneficial and left it unanswered. But Trump has a real lever of influence. Erdogan wants to buy American F-35 fighter jets. Turkey was removed from the list of buyers in 2019 after Ankara purchased Russian S-400 air defense systems capable of shooting down American planes. These sanctions can be lifted if you give up Russian oil and gas, Trump hinted bluntly. Erdogan left to think it over.
He is a wonderful president, a very smart man. He will do the right thing. We had a very good conversation regarding the purchase of military equipment.
But as for Orban, Trump not only failed to convince him, as a result, he started repeating after him that there is no alternative to Russian oil for Hungary and Slovakia. So for now, there is no progress here. The next topic of discussion is new sanctions that the United States could impose on Russia. Again, there were no breakthroughs. Trump expects that Europe will increase the pressure from its side. But what comes next is the most interesting part. Another request from Zelensky to Trump was made during the closed part of their conversation. He hinted at it in an interview with Axios.
What is the one big thing, the real thing? Not in the open part of the conversation. What would you like to get from Donald Trump in order to win on the battlefield? I think President Trump knows. I told him yesterday. And what is it? I won't tell you what it is, but I will say that he replied, "We will work on it." Is it some kind of weapon that you need? Yes, and by the way, just because we absolutely need it, that doesn't necessarily mean we will actually use it.
This puzzle was deciphered by the British The Telegraph. Zelensky asked the United States to deploy their Tomahawk cruise missiles on Ukrainian territory as a means of deterrence and to force Putin to negotiate. Another very significant achievement. The Wall Street Journal claims that Trump is allegedly not opposed to lifting restrictions on the use of American long-range weapons. Back in the spring, the administration banned Ukraine from using ATAK-MS to strike Russia. But next week, according to the article citing American and European officials, Ukrainian high-ranking officials will come to negotiate on this issue with the head of the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth. When asked what exactly changed Trump's mind about him and Ukraine's chances of winning the war, Zelensky just smiles.
That's my dialogue with President Trump. I want it to remain between us. The administration says it's not the right time yet.
American journalists questioned their sources in the administration, and those sources suggest the biggest factor in changing course was that Putin did nothing after the Alaska red carpet and generous offers of cooperation from Trump, as well as Special Representative Kit Kellogg and Ambassador Shavon Michael Waltz, who came to the president in time with analytics showing that the Russians' gains on the battlefield are insignificant compared to the resources invested in the war. And the lines at gas stations all over Russia, as well as the ban on the export of petroleum products extended until the end of the year, speak volumes about the state of the economy.
Things are going frankly badly for them, considering they've put everything on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing everything indiscriminately and capturing very little territory. If they're capturing anything at all, in fact, they've actually lost some territory, so I think this is very bad for Russia's reputation. This war should have ended. If this were our war, we would have ended it in a week. But they're entering their 4th year. 4 years of fighting.
Putin, who is always in an uncertain situation, has frozen. His spokesperson, Peskov, cautiously said that now it's their turn to convey their position to the American authorities. Foreign Minister Lavrov met with Secretary of State Sharubio in New York. But it's clear that Putin will also try to regain the favor of his friend Donald. Trump himself hasn't completely closed that door either. When asked if he still trusts Putin, he said, "I'll let you know in a month." Olha Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko, New York, Washington, TSN Week, 1+1 Marathon. The only news.
International law does not work today. Security guarantees exist only for those who have strong allies and their own weapons. President Zelensky openly stated this from the UN General Assembly podium. He called for the creation of global rules for the use of artificial intelligence in weaponry and to stop Putin before it is too late, and also announced the export of cutting-edge Ukrainian weapons. The president also made several other important statements in an interview with the American publication Axios. In particular, he said that he does not recognize the occupied territories as belonging to Russia, but if a ceasefire were declared tomorrow, he would agree to freeze everything along the current front line. And Ukraine would reclaim its lands later through diplomatic means. And in the president's opinion, this would be a good compromise. When asked whether he plans to remain president in peacetime as well, Zelensky replied that he is ready not to run for another presidential term if the war with Russia can be ended. And on Saturday, at a briefing, he revealed some details of his conversation with Trump. He said that if the Russians threaten a blackout, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, then the Kremlin must know that there will be a blackout in the capital of Russia as well. Russia must understand that civilized countries differ from some others in that they never strike first and are not aggressors, but that does not mean they are weak, and one should not show weakness. What else did Demar Zelensky say to Donald Trump that made him so noticeably change his opinion about Ukraine's capabilities? And will it be possible to actually get Putin to the negotiating table? We hope to ask the key negotiator for the president of Ukraine, the head of his office, Andriy Yermak, about the details of internal diplomatic efforts. We are waiting for Mr. Andriy to join us live in just a few minutes. And now, a unique thing that may have changed Trump's position. Correspondent of the week, Andriy visited the place where Ukrainian soldiers turned Putin's offensive apparently into a farce. We're talking about the encirclement operation set up with Surzyan near Pokrovsk, which was clearly confirmed to the US president by American intelligence. What does it actually look like? Watch now. And let me remind you about our fundraiser for electronic warfare equipment for the 159th Mechanized Brigade. Just use this QR code. Thank you to everyone who can join in.
Encirclement instead of a breakthrough, panic is spreading on enemy resources. 3 groups of occupiers north of Pokrovsk have been trapped in pockets at once, and the defense forces continue to tighten the noose. To escape from the completely encircled and shattered villages near Dobropilia and save the lives of their soldiers, the Russians have only one option left: a narrow corridor through the village of Novoekonomikne.
This is Novoekonomikne, also Novotaretske, closer to Mirnohrad, and we also have a presence in Pokrovsk itself. The enemy is making every effort to enter Pokrovsk. Our groups are working to detect and cut off the logistical route. We have blocked the logistical route. The enemy is already having difficulty entering Pokrovsk. And those who remain in the city itself, who ran in earlier or are trying to sneak in now, we are eliminating them.
But it's too early to celebrate victory. The Russian command still believes that their overwhelming numerical advantage will help them break through the Ukrainian defense. Unfortunately, some Ukrainian commanders concealed the loss of positions or did not report them in time. That is why Russian soldiers continue to infiltrate both near Dobropilia and all the way to Pokrovsk itself. To save the situation in the Pokrovsk area, the defense forces have deployed their best assault units. The 425th Scylia Regiment is one of those units that managed to drive the Russians into a trap. Do they know Scylia? Yeah.
At night. They're afraid of it, like the devil himself. When we tell them, "Do you know who you're up against?" Yeah, at night. The Scylia Assault Regiment, you hear? You can see their facial expression change. So what are you taking prisoners for?
We'll get back to the prisoners later. But first, the commander of the artillerymen is taking us to the position of the howitzers that cover the regiment's assault troops. He calls the tasks that Scylia performs crisis management.
We put out fires where it's hottest and where it's the hardest. Because our guys are fearless and conscious. They know that if not us, then who?
Fire. The Paladin's self-propelled gun is currently blocking the occupiers' last logistical corridor. But the enemy acts the same way. That's why the air here is filled with drones.
You're back, you bastard. More drones. There are more drones. It became harder to work.
Russian drones are hunting this gun. Is it flying?
Paralyzed. Now let's wait a bit and shoot. Shot!
High drone activity in the air means that movement has started on enemy positions. Using drones as cover, the Russians are trying to advance. Shot! The fighters of the Scylia Regiment take advantage of any moment when the sky is clear of Russian drones, and that's when the combat work begins. Here near Pokrovsk, things are very active both in the sky and on the ground, so every detail matters, from quality camouflage to the teamwork of these gunners. A shotgun, the only possible defense against fiber optic drones, still doesn't provide a 100% guarantee. It's 50-50. Well, it might help or it might not. Enemy drones are hunting for artillery and Scylia's pilots. They are priority targets. The front line is so notional that the enemy can end up behind their lines. A unique case, these 2 Russians were captured not by assault troops or infantry, but by Scylia's operators.
Pilots. It doesn't mean we're actual pilots. In the rear, we sit in bunkers on couches. Right now, we're pilots, but in half an hour, we could be assault troops. In other words, we're ready for that.
A Russian assault pair was looking for gaps in the Ukrainian defense. One is from Novosibirsk, the other is a local.
The bird spotted us.
The bird, that's your drone?
Yes, that's right. We were just following the bird and never really understood where we were going.
Okay, and when you were sent out, what tasks were you given?
We weren't given any tasks. Just follow the bird.
Tell me, does it happen that you aren't given any tasks?
Yes.
So they reached the spot from which Ukrainian drones were being launched.
On the path, damn, we even stopped. I saw a young guy. He didn't give himself away in any way.
That he was Ukrainian?
That he was a Ukrainian serviceman? Neither by his uniform nor by his appearance.
And what did he say to you? The operator immediately understood. The occupiers think these are their own people here. And here's what he told them. He immediately switched to Russian.
What's up, bro? And where are we? And where were you headed? Well, and where were you planning to go? Do you see which position you need? Position, Lion? Bro, it's definitely not there. You probably passed it. How do we find it? We're getting in touch, we'll go out, we'll find it now.
Genius, simply genius. In short, the key word here is bro. Already in Glinda, 2 of them realized they had ended up with the Ukrainians. And they remembered all the horror stories that Russian propaganda had drilled into them.
It's not this one, it's the other one. So I did nothing. So he was afraid of this. They thought they would be shot and tortured. The first one, something about torture.
How many
times a day do you actually eat?
3 times.
Do they feed you?
With what?
Feed?
Homemade food.
These two are just part of the large group of prisoners that the soldiers of the 425th Regiment captured over a month in the Dobropilya and Pokrovsk directions. At a certain point, they start to understand. Captivity with 3 meals a day is a pretty good alternative, considering what awaits them in Pokrovsk.
Those who made it to Pokrovska are just a handful, and they're already demoralized too. The people who end up there, who ran into that basement, they're just sitting there. They pose no threat to us. There are groups that go around, check, and clear out the area. They destroy these enemy hideouts. There might have been 50 of them today. Tomorrow there will be 30, and the day after tomorrow there will be 15.
We are in a secret underground bunker that the fighters from Kelly built very close to Pokrovsk, practically right under the enemy's nose. It is very well camouflaged. Russian drones fly overhead and bombs fall, but down here underground there's a dining room with a cook, a shower and laundry, television and internet.
A soldier should feel completely at home, better provided for than if he were somewhere far away in a building that's already falling apart. It's dry and warm here, there's food to eat, you can wash up. Basically, a person feels at home and safe, but at the same time you always know you're at war.
Having secured their defensive positions, the infantry from Kelly is already preparing for a counteroffensive and even for advancing. To quickly cross the Russian kill zone, the infantrymen got on a motorcycle. Modern cavalry is already planning rapid breakthroughs, sudden assaults, and constant changes in the direction of attack. Because only by changing tactics like this can Pokrovsk and other cities in Donetsk region be held. Andriy Tsaplienko and Lia Shenkarenko, Yulia Solo, Serhiy Prefilov, TSN Week, 1+1, Marathon, United News.
Meanwhile, the Russians are already preparing a new provocation, as stated by the spokesperson of their foreign ministry, Zakharova. Kyiv is allegedly planning to repair several downed Russian drones, load them with explosives, and launch them at major NATO transport hubs in Poland and Romania, blaming Russia for the attack. This is not the first time the Russians have revealed their own plans in this way, so our allies should remain vigilant. So where did Ukrainians actually take action this week? And why has panic in particular gripped occupied Crimea? Our correspondent from TSN Week, Alexander Zahorodny, will explain. It's floating, 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 so when will it be blown up?
There's a saying, if an unmanned boat isn't blown up, it blows up on its own. For example, by destroying an oil loading pier in the Russian city of Tuapse. Holy shit, that's really burning.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank God it's there.
This week, good maritime and aerial drones impose sanctions on Russia's main Black Sea ports, Novorossiysk and Tuapse. In Novorossiysk, the sniper-like air defense and naval gunners are firing so wildly that they end up setting several of their own buildings, a hotel, and local cars on fire. The battered remnants of the Black Sea Fleet, instead of defending, are destroying the city they've been hiding in for the 3rd year now.
Oh my God, the cars are burning. Something really hit them very hard.
The air defense for cars obviously is weaker. The port is mostly defended with small arms. Random vacationers are suffering from stray bullets. They picked the worst time to come for the velvet season.
So here we are lying down, greeting bullets with our heads, unable to make it to the beach. Someone got wounded, they're screaming over there.
After a powerful explosion in the port of Tuapse, the siren finally goes off. Now even the Russians know what an air raid siren sounds like. Damn, the shockwave is about to reach us. In the last 2 weeks alone, 15 major oil facilities have caught fire in Russia. And that's very timely, military expert Ivan Stupak notes with a smile.
Right now, it's really vacation season. The season when these refineries are taken offline for repairs. And Ukraine says, good evening, I'm the dispatcher, we're checking the condition of your refineries.
If in the summer Ukraine carried out isolated strikes on Russian oil giants, now there's a systematic approach, notes expert Serhiy Koyun. And yes, he agrees as well. The timing was chosen well. The best timing.
Time is working against them because they've always had a tough situation at the peak of the season. That is in August, September. They've always had a shortage of gasoline. And now we've added a little more at this peak and everything just fell apart over there.
Analysts from reporting from Ukraine note that Ukraine has managed to turn isolated, irregular attacks into a powerful destruction of Russia's key economic sector. The Samara, Syzran, Saratov, Ilsky and Afipsky oil refineries in the Krasnodar region are burning. Strikes have also been carried out on one of the largest processing plants in the Volgograd region. Already 21% of Russia's oil refining capacity has been put out of commission. And the good news is there's almost nothing left to repair them with. A fuel shortage, especially of gasoline, has hit the south. In Crimea, there's practically none left.
There's no gasoline at all in the city, only diesel. And now they've brought in 2 tankers, but everyone will buy it up right away and that'll be it. That's how it is. The situation with gasoline, in short, isn't changing. There's no 95, 92, or 100 octane. Only diesel is available. I have a range of 40 kilometers left. There's no gasoline in Belgorod.
The shortage that exists in Russia today shows that we managed to hit exactly where we needed to. It's precisely these bottlenecks, the most important ones, like the technological units at the plant that actually process the oil.
Yeah, well... And an even thinner thread was found, the one on which the entire oil dollar business of the gas station country hangs. And it has become the priority of the new Ukrainian tactic. Destroying not only oil refineries, but also trying to hit the export of oil products itself is what expert Serhiy Koyun believes should be done.
Oil pumping stations are also like the needle of Koshchei's death. It's a bottleneck. A plant where people move around dozens of hectares by bus through these factories. And what is an oil pumping station? It's a local facility and it's a very convenient target. That's why all these huge tens of millions of tons of oil for export pass through it every month.
Of course, pumping stations are repaired quickly, but they also catch fire again just as quickly. And in the near future, the Russians might face a problem. What to do with the oil? And the solution? Should they kill the goose that lays the golden eggs?
If you shut down a well, you usually can't restart it. And if you do manage to restart it, it takes a huge amount of money and time. And it's a kind of roulette. You might be able to restore it or you might not. That's why it's a nightmare for any driller.
And while it's not a global issue, it's a very painful one for the Russians and very beneficial for us, this cotton. In the past week, several helicopters in Crimea have been permanently grounded.
Here are the helicopters. The fuselage is just lying there.
Likewise, 2 more and 26 transport planes have been destroyed in Crimea. And importantly, 2 maritime reconnaissance aircraft as well. It was these aircraft that were preventing our naval drones from operating freely. But perhaps the biggest catch was the fighter jet over Zaporizhzhia, which was preparing to drop a guided bomb. These glide bombs, or FABs, are perhaps the last trump card the Russians have, which we hope we've now found a way to counter. As winter approaches, the Russians will traditionally try to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Chernihiv was without power for several days. Intimidating the civilian population is a characteristic trait of Russia. So the flights of Russian military aircraft over the Baltic countries and drones over Scandinavian civilian airports are elements of the same tactic. And just in case, Europeans would do well to follow the example of Ukrainians and shoot down a few Russian planes, Ivan Stupak believes, for prevention. Because Russians only understand strength. Alexander Zagorodny, Valentin Shilkote, price per week 1.1. Marathon, the only news.
Well, another potential threat to us. In Moldova, very disturbing parliamentary elections are currently ending. It is the parliament that will determine whether Moldova will stay with us on the path to the EU. Let me remind you, we are going through the accession process together. Or Moldova will become a branch of Russia. The main competitors are the pro-European party of Maya Sandu, Action and Solidarity, and the pro-Russian opposition political bloc, where communists and socialists have joined forces with the notorious Igor Dodon at the helm. Moscow has done everything to bring Chisinau back under its influence. Voter bribery, disinformation campaigns, and issues with gas supply within the country being exploited. There were even statements from Russian intelligence about a possible occupation of Moldova by NATO troops. Putin seeks to surround Ukraine with regimes unfriendly to us and to block the airspace from the West as well. That's why, for the elections in Moldova, which shares the longest border with our country after Russia, the Kremlin's leader spared no expense. This week, local law enforcement discovered a crypto wallet containing hundreds of millions of dollars. It was used specifically to fund pro-Russian parties in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky called on the European Union to support Moldova so that the country does not experience a repeat of the Georgian or Belarusian scenario. The cost of inaction is too high, the head of state emphasized. We will learn the results of these truly fateful elections as soon as tomorrow. It is at that time that the Election Commission will receive the protocols from the overseas polling stations. And it was precisely the diaspora that secured Maya Sandu's victory. So should we really be surprised that there are widespread reports of bomb threats there? In Brussels, Rome, Genoa, Bucharest, the American city of Asheville, and the Spanish city of Alicante. We hope these provocations won't succeed and that we won't have to dig trenches along the Moldovan border. Meanwhile, as early as 3:30 p.m., the Moldovan Election Center declared the elections valid. So voter turnout is very high. And the anniversary session of the UN General Assembly had a rather peculiar backdrop in Europe. So-called unidentified drones continued to test the world order and challenging NATO and not in the alliance's favor. For now. Did Denmark get the most attention? On Monday evening, the airport in their capital, Copenhagen, the largest in Northern Europe, suspended all flights. Several drones appeared from different directions, turning their lights on and off, and after a few hours they disappeared. Danish police stated that the drones appeared to be operated by a competent operator, but whose drones they were is still not clearly stated. That same Monday, drones were flying over the center of Norway's capital, Oslo. 2 people were detained in connection with this, and then a mysterious object appeared over their main airport, Gardermoen. Because of this, the airspace also had to be closed and several flights were redirected. On Wednesday, September 24th, United States Aviation intercepted 4 Russian military aircraft in the Alaska Air Defense Zone. It was there, I remind you, at the Anchorage military base, that Trump recently strolled with the war criminal Putin. That same day, there was another provocation in the Baltic Sea. A Russian fighter jet flew extremely close over a German Navy frigate. On September 25th, unidentified drones once again reached the Skridstrup air base in Denmark, where NATO F-16s and F-35s are stationed. And on the same day, it became known about unidentified drones over the French military base Mourmelon-le-Grand. On the night before Friday, Denmark once again closed the Aalborg air base and the civilian airport of the same name for the 3rd time already. And in the evening of the same day, unidentified flying objects appeared again near the country's military facilities, this time near the main airbase of the Royal Danish Air Force. Are they really drones, and why are they primarily interested in Denmark? The Russians openly talk about this live on air, as in this propaganda talk show, for example.
Denmark has basically become the leader in this whole story, supporting Ukraine. They're even setting up a Ukrainian factory. And now Zelensky is calling on all European countries, following Denmark's example, to set up so-called Ukrainian military factories to kill Russian citizens.
We need to officially declare that we consider them a legitimate target and cover the whole place with orishnik, hazel trees, a metaphor for shelling.
The word Muscovites almost directly explains what they plan to do next. But the Europeans pretend as if they don't hear these threats. And not a single drone was shot down. What do you think? Why? It turns out there's an explanation that just doesn't fit in my head. Listen carefully. President Macron, in particular, considers Russian drones to be just a test. And that's why the French are not going to open fire on them. Maybe some of you understand this logic. I would appreciate your comments on the TSN Tijden YouTube channel, because as for me, there was a test, and the French, along with other NATO members, failed it. Meanwhile, the Poles are preparing changes to the legislation that will allow them to shoot down Russian drones over Ukraine and Belarus without NATO's consent. And as for European diplomats, Bloomberg writes that they have privately warned the Kremlin elite that if the Russians continue to violate NATO airspace, Russian aircraft will indeed be shot down.